Hello, welcome to On the Creative Road. I'm Brenda Harris, and today is day 9 of 30 days of our warm-ups, and we're finally starting on something a little different. I say finally as if it's like finally, we're not doing the other stuff anymore. It is exciting when you change mediums, and today we're going to be working in watercolor. So hopefully you have some form of water soluble paints. It doesn't have to be watercolor. It can be acrylic, it can be gouache, it can be, there's some water soluble oil paints, even though those have an interesting texture to them. We're not really focusing on any specific art technique. We're just going to be doing some experiments. So I'll be using watercolor. I wouldn't worry too much about how fancy your watercolors are. Whether they're expensive or whether they're cheap, you can still play and make experiments and just figure them out a little bit. Anytime I have a new brand or a new brush or a new setup, whatever it is, it's fun to just take some time to experiment. I'm going to be using those smaller sheets again, so if you want to tear down some smaller sheets and join me, that would be great. And let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else you should know. So if you need to pause and go get your supplies, go do that. You're going to need a little bit of water, your brushes, paper, and your paint. All right, let's go. Hey buddy, my dog decided he wanted to play right when I sat down to make this video. I know, you think I'm talking to you. Just so you know, the watercolor palette that I'm using, I'm talking here. Where'd your toy go? I'll say it again because my dog was barking, but it's Kuretake Gansai Tambi. I hope I said that right. That's the watercolor set that I'm using, and I'm not sure the name of this particular color set. I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it. If I find it, I'll put that down in the notes. I have some paper. I still have my chalk pastels. I have my watercolor palette here. This is an old palette. My watercolors have already dried, but they're activated with water, so that's okay. I'll use some of these colors and mix on top, and I just kind of continue on with this palette, even though it's full already. And just so you see it's completely full, but that's okay. I have some watercolor brushes, my water, and I'm all set for day 9. We're gonna just play with our materials. Watercolor, or any paints in general, can be really intimidating because suddenly you're introducing water, you're introducing an unpredictable element to what you're making, because depending on your brushes, depending on your amount of water on your brush, depending on what kind of watercolors you're using, depending on a lot of things, there's an unknown, right? And I think things that we can't control seem a little like, oh, I don't know how to do this. And I see it all the time in my acrylic painting classes. And to me, acrylic is a really forgiving medium. But I see all the time beginner students getting really nervous, and they walk in and they say, I have never painted. I've never, held a brush. I don't know how to do this. And they're really intimidating. And there's a lot of elements to remember. Like, when do I dip my brush? Which brush do I use? How do I need to wet the canvas first? There's so many questions. Rusty, baby. He actually wasn't feeling well, and so I'm so happy that I'm like, go ahead, interrupt, because I actually missed one of my days, and nobody probably noticed because who's counting? But I was counting, and I missed a day because I love how dark this red is right now. Just going for it. I just jumped right in, and you're welcome to jump in too. I just started talking and making, and that's creativity for you. It did not wait for me to be fully ready. It just said, you want to make these lines and you want to make them now. So here I am. So feel free to jump in and make some lines with me. So yeah, so my dog wasn't feeling well, and we took him to the vet. We had to get him some medicine, and You know, he's feeling a lot better, so he wants to play, and I'm just so thankful that he wants to play. So I want to show you the difference between paint that I'm grabbing directly from the pigment without using a lot of water, and that's these really dark red marks. And then now I'm gonna add more water. It's gonna make my marks a little more transparent. It's not transparent enough. Add more water here. And when it dries, it's gonna have a much lighter, kind of like these over here, if you can tell. These are darker red and these are lighter. And it's just because the pigment ran out a little bit more. There's a lot more water consistency, so it gives it more of a transparent look. It's a lighter color, and it's an easy way to manipulate your lights and darks. We just spent a couple days practicing shading, drawing, shading, and here we are with watercolor, and it's a whole different beast, right? Achieving the different values and creating a value scale is a little bit different once you introduce a medium that relies on your solvent. It's what you're mixing your pigment with, your color with. I did paint with oils for a little bit before I had kids, when I was younger. And I enjoyed how smooth I could get my paintings. However, I didn't like how long it took for my paintings to dry. And once I had kids, I thought, there's no way I can just leave paintings out. I had no way of storing them. I had no way of hiding them from them. So I thought, and also, you know, oils you mix with a paint thinner. And there are like different, I know now there's different thinners that you could use for oil painting that maybe one day I'll try out. And I do have some oil paints that are water soluble. I haven't played with them too much, so, and maybe one day I'll pull them out just so we can play with them together, or you can at least see what that looks like. I would say I'm not 100% comfortable with those. That's okay. Just another tool to learn and play with. So I'm just making these little lines and creating texture all over this page. I chose a bright red because hopefully you can see it. I know sometimes I've used yellow and colors that perhaps you couldn't see as well. And I find painting very relaxing, a bit more relaxing than drawing, actually. Because I like the unpredictability. I understand that that's the part that can stress people out, but I think it frees me a little bit because I have less expectation of what my line should look like or what my mark should look like. Whereas with a pencil, I feel like I should be able to manipulate it a little bit more. I want my instinct is to control it a little bit more. And so if I get a wonky line or I mess up a shading or I mess something up, I'm a little harder on myself, I think, when I'm using colored pencil or pencil. I know that sounds silly. And I do realize that sometimes I say things that, unless you make art on a regular basis, I might sound crazy. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Your pencil marks. Wanting to control your pencil mark. I love that. That makes me think of like strawberry for some reason. It's got strawberry vibes. So this one is a dotted pattern. Move this over here. Let's try thin lines. Today, I don't want to use a lot of water. I am experimenting with my watercolor almost as if it's a marker or a pencil. So I'm not using as much water. Tomorrow, maybe we'll experiment a little bit more with different approaches to watercolor. And what I mean by that is whether you're doing wet on wet or dry on dry. So right now my paper is dry and my brush is wet. And so that allows me to apply these marks almost as if it's just like a really thick marker. I like this green color. Feel better, buddy? You can't see it, but I am petting my dog with my left hand and making these marks with my right. This is some sort of fantastical feat right now. Like, you know, patting your tummy and like patting your head and rubbing your tummy kind of thing. I'm not usually good at that stuff. It's nice to dedicate some time every day to make some marks, even though in some way we are making marks every day without realizing it. If you've written your name or written the date or written in your calendar or made some sort of grocery list, you're already mark making. You're lettering for sure. You're making marks that look like letters, and if somebody looked at them, they'd say, well, that's an A and that's a B, or they'd recognize your mark making. And yet you're just making marks on a page, and they make sense because we have practiced our writing so much that we can write our letters so well that they're recognizable, right? And I think the same thing goes for painting or drawing, especially if you're trying to draw and paint with a specific thing in mind, like you're painting something that you want to be recognizable, because of course there's abstract and different forms of art that isn't necessarily, it's more of like feeling or a balance of shape and color and movement versus, hey, that's an apple, you know, a recognizable item. So there's all forms of different art making, but it's basically just mark making. And we already do that all the time. We just don't really think about it or realize it or pay attention to it. And I always wish I had better handwriting, honestly. You would think, it's funny because you would think I'd have beautiful handwriting. I don't, or at least I don't really like it. I love my sister's handwriting, actually, and she does not claim to be an artist. I think I'm just in a hurry usually when I'm writing. So my mark making when I'm writing is fast, and it shows. And sometimes it's not legible. It's not that bad. I'm making it sound bad. I just always thought to myself, you're an artist. You should have nicer handwriting. Maybe you should practice your lettering a little bit more so that way your handwriting is like really nice. And I just don't. I'd rather be painting something. I'd rather be doing what I'm doing right now. Making some patterns of some sort. Lovely. That's nice. Sounds like Morse code. It actually makes me think of like water. Somehow it's like water. If I had done different blues and different color blues and greens, it would look like a swamp or a lake of some sort. I like that a lot. Should we do one more? Should we sneak in one more? This is my favorite part of making art, is the freedom to explore your ideas. If something just floats to the surface. I didn't mean to think of this. I didn't mean to think. I had no intention before starting this video of making some sort of watery scene here. But it came to mind, and why not? Get to jump on that idea. And maybe you're making something else. Maybe you're working on a different kind of pattern. It doesn't have to look like mine. Maybe you're doing exactly what I'm doing. That's cool. That's half the battle in art, I think, is listening to your yeses and your nos, respecting your nos. So if you do something you don't really like, saying, ooh, okay, I'm not gonna do that anymore. Or, you know, I don't know, maybe you need to explore a little more to see why you don't like it. Maybe it's something you need to work out. And then if you do something you really like, asking yourself, well, either way you gotta ask yourself, but, you know, why did you like that? What about it did you like, and how can you replicate it, or how can you encourage that same feeling again by doing, is it by doing it again, or what exactly made you say yes? I'm still using that drawing paper that we had. I just had extras, so I thought, I'm not using a lot of water. When you're not using a lot of water, it's okay that the paper is thinner, but if I was using a lot more water, I would want thicker watercolor paper for sure. And it's almost better to stop before you go too far. So that way you can kind of look at it and say, is that right? Is that what I wanted? Good. So I've got my little strawberry inspired, looks like strawberry, like the little pits in the strawberry, the little seeds. And that green one. So the green one inspired, these both kind of inspired my last one. Well, that was fun. So tomorrow we're gonna play a little bit more with our watercolor and adding more water. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.